You don't know the man who bought you. You don't know his name, his rank, or which household inside the palace he serves. What you know is the smell of the room, cedarwood oil and river mud, and the fact that the man writing in the papyrus scroll has not looked at you once. He writes, he stamps, he rolls the scroll. You are entered into the record, not by name, by number, and by the Pharaoh's household designation, a mark that means roughly, acquired, usable, stored. You are 8 years old. Your mother was sold to a merchant's house before you were born. The merchant sold you to the palace steward when you were weaned. The palace steward has just sold you upward, to the secondary household of the great royal wife, who herself answers to the living God on the throne, who has not yet been told that you exist. By the time he is told, you will already have been useful for 3 years. Welcome to your new life as a concubine in ancient Egypt. The pay is room and board. The retirement plan is the desert. The job interview already happened, you just weren't in the room. The question is not whether this place will use you up. The question is what you will have learned by the time it does. Part 1. The household that owns you. The palace is not one building. You will learn this slowly, in the way you learn everything here, by watching feet. You watch feet because you are not yet permitted to raise your eyes above the waist of any free person above your station. This means you know the palace from the ground up, which corridors are limestone, which are packed clay, which ones flood when the Nile rises, which ones stay dry. There is a word for what you are. Hemet, it means woman. It also means wife. It also means servant. The Egyptians are economical with their language when it suits them. You are housed in the ipet, the inner residential quarters attached to the royal estate. It is not the innermost chamber. That is for the great royal wife, the chief consort, the woman whose sons carry the future of the 2 lands in their blood. Then come the lesser wives, the secondary wives, the women given in diplomatic arrangements, the daughters of Nubian chiefs and Hittite kings and Syrian governors who arrived in caravans wrapped in gold cloth and interpreted as political gifts. Then come the concubines. You are below the wives, above the ordinary household servants. The line between those 2 categories is thin, and everyone in this place knows it, and no one speaks of it. The woman who oversees your section of the ipet is named Nebeta. She is not cruel in the way cruelty is obvious. She is precise. She has managed this household for 11 years, longer than you have been alive. Her hair is oiled and her eyes are painted with green malachite, and she carries a thin wooden rod she has used perhaps 4 times in those 11 years. Not because she is merciful, but because 4 times has been sufficient. Nebeta teaches you 3 things in the first week. Walk quietly. Answer quickly. Never be found idle. These are not suggestions. They are the contract. You learn to braid hair. You learn to grind grain. You learn to carry a water jar on your head from the courtyard fountain to the inner rooms without spilling, because the woman who spills does it twice before Nebeta's rod appears. You learn the hierarchy of the inner household by memorizing which woman sleeps in which room, in which order her mat is laid, in what direction her sandals face when she wakes. The great royal wife does not speak to you directly for the first 2 years. She does not speak to most of the women directly. She speaks to Nebeta. Nebeta speaks to the senior concubines. The senior concubines speak to the junior ones. You are at the bottom of a chain that was built before your grandmother was born. You are fed twice a day. Bread, beer, dried fish when the stores are full. Occasionally onions. The bread is coarse. The beer is thick. It is more food than you would have eaten in the merchant's house, and you know this, and it makes the arrangement feel rational, which is what an arrangement needs to feel like to survive. At night you sleep on a woven mat in a room with 11 other girls. Some of them have been here since before you arrived. Some of them will leave before you do, not because they are freed, but because the household moves. The palace shifts with the seasons, with the Pharaoh's campaigns, with the demands of ritual and politics that you are not yet old enough to understand. But you are learning. Every day, you learn a little more of what this place is, and what it requires of you. Part 2. The years of being made useful. By the time you are 11, you have been taught to play the sistrum, the sacred rattle used in temple ceremonies. You have been taught to dance in the style required for feast days. Controlled, precise, nothing abandoned. You've been taught to mix oils and apply them without waste. You've been taught which words belong to formal address and which belong to intimate conversation. And you've been taught, above all, the difference between those two registers and when each one is required. There is a woman in your section of the ipet named Maritre. She arrived from a village in Upper Egypt 7 years before you and has since risen, in the way rising is possible here, to the position of senior companion to the second wife. Maritre is not pretty in the way the palace artists paint prettiness. She is something more useful than that. She is precise and quiet and extraordinarily good at knowing what a person needs before they ask for it. You watch Maritre the way you have learned to watch everything here. Eyes down, attention up. What you learn from Maritre is not a skill, it is a principle. The principle is this: a woman who anticipates is worth 10 women who comply. Compliance is a product. Anticipation is an art. The art is what elevates a woman from the outer rooms to the inner ones, from the general service of the household to the specific attention of the Pharaoh's orbit. At 12, you are assigned to serve at the formal dinner held for a visiting delegation from Punt. You carry wine, you refill cups, you do not speak, you do not meet eyes, you move and you do not spill, and afterward Nebeta says nothing to you, which is the highest form of approval available in this household. At 13, you are moved from the outer service room to the interior corridor that runs beside the second wife's private apartment. This is not a promotion in any formal sense. No one announces it, no scroll changes. But the women in your room look at you differently the morning after you do not return to the mat you have slept on for 5 years, and you understand without being told that something has shifted and that it cannot be shifted back. The second wife's name is Iset. She is the daughter of a military officer, not of a king, and she has been in the palace since she was 14. She is now perhaps 30. She has 2 sons, not the crown prince, but sons recognized by Pharaoh, sons who will hold offices and positions and land. Iset is careful and generous, and every morning before she speaks to anyone she touches the doorframe of her room, once with 2 fingers as if confirming it is still there. You notice this the first week. You never ask about it. You understand. It is the gesture of a woman who checks that her ground still holds before she trusts her weight to it. You serve Iset her morning bread. You bring her water before the sun is fully up. You learn the rhythm of her waking, her small angers, her longer silences. You learn when she wants company and when she wants the room empty, and you become very good at leaving before being asked. One evening, Maritre passes you in the corridor outside Iset's apartment. She does not slow down, but she looks at the doorway, then at you, and gives the smallest nod, the recognition of someone who has seen the doorframe gesture herself, and understands what it means to be trusted with another person's private fear. You do not forget that nod. This is, as best as anyone in this place can define it, success. You are fed better now. You sleep in a narrower room, but a private one, a mat plus a clay oil lamp that you are permitted to leave burning 1 finger length of wick per night. You have a carved ivory comb that Iset gave you without ceremony, pressing it into your hand after you dressed her hair for the feast of Opet. Saying nothing, looking already toward the doorway, you hold the comb for a long time after she leaves. You hold it because it is the first object you have ever owned. You are 13 years old. You are standing at the edge of the only world you know, and the next one has already sent for you, though you do not know it yet. Part 3. The selection and what follows. You are 15 when the Pharaoh's personal steward, a eunuch named Senefer, a man of perhaps 50, with a careful walk and the lateral manner of someone who has spent decades delivering news that requires no visible reaction, comes to the section of the ipet where Iset's household is kept. He does not come for Iset. He looks at 3 women. He looks at you for slightly longer than the other 2. He writes something on a wax-sealed tablet. He leaves. Nebeta comes to your room that evening. She tells you what to wear. She tells you what oils to use. She tells you to sleep now if you can, because tomorrow you will be moved again, and this time the move is permanent. You do not sleep. You lie on the mat in the narrow room with the oil lamp burning its permitted length, and you think about Mariter and the ivory comb and Iset's face at the feast of Opet. And you understand that the life you have spent 7 years building inside this smaller world is now finished, and a larger, more dangerous one is beginning. The royal harem, the formal concubinage of the pharaoh himself, is housed in a compound within the palace complex that operates as its own enclosed world. You learn this on the first morning. There are walls within walls. There are stewards within stewards. There is a hierarchy of women here that makes the hierarchy in Iset's household look simple, the way a single-room house looks simple when you have just entered a city. There are women from every territory the empire has absorbed. Women who arrived as tribute from Nubia, from Libya, from the Levant, from Mitanni, from places whose names you have only heard in the administrative roles that Nebata used to read aloud on provisioning days. These women speak different languages. They wear their grief in different postures. They have been beautiful, and they have been useful, and some of them have been both, and some have been neither, and all of them are still here. You are assigned a senior companion, a woman named Kia, not the famous one. A different Kia, older, with a scar on her left wrist, and eyes that evaluate everything in the room at once. Kia will show you how this compound operates. She will tell you which of the senior women carry influence with Senefer, which carry influence with the great royal wife, which carry influence with no one and have stopped trying, and which are dangerous in the specific way of women who have nothing left to lose. The pharaoh does not summon you that season, nor the next. You wait. This is a skill. Waiting done correctly is not passive. It is a form of sustained readiness that requires the same discipline as action, the body present, the mind alert, the face composed. You watch the women who are summoned and you watch the women who are not. You begin to see the pattern. Who gets summoned is not entirely about beauty. Beauty is the entrance requirement, the minimum qualification. What determines who rises past the entrance is something less visible and less easily named. You ask Kia about it once. She looks at you for a long moment and then says, "The ones he sees again are the ones who remember what he told them the first time." You do not forget this. The first summoning, when it comes, is in the 41st year of a king whose name you are not permitted to write yourself, but have heard spoken so many times it has become a kind of weather. Present, surrounding, not personal. You are 17. The room is smaller than you expected. The light is oil lamp yellow and the sheets are linen of a quality you have never touched. There is a cup of wine. There is a silence that is the loudest thing in the room. You remember what Kia told you. You remember everything. Part 4, the economy of the inner rooms. There is an economy inside the concubinage that operates alongside the one outside. It runs on different currencies. Outside, the economy runs on grain, gold, and land. Inside, it runs on proximity, access. The thin margin between a woman who has been summoned twice and a woman who has been summoned 12 times. The distance between a face the pharaoh recognizes and a face he has forgotten. You are summoned 4 times in the first year. This is not nothing. It is not Kia's number. Kia was summoned 11 times in the year before her knees began to bother her. But it is not nothing. After the 4th summons, you are given a larger room. 2 oil lamps, a cedarwood chest for your possessions. The cedarwood chest makes the other women assess you differently. Not with warmth, with calculation. There is a woman in the eastern corridor named Ipet, not Iset, a different woman, a different name that the household has lived inside long enough for the difference to stop mattering, who has been here since before you arrived, and who has the specific economy of a woman who peaked in the 2nd year and has spent every subsequent year managing the distance between that peak and the present. Ipet does not speak to you directly. She speaks about you to other women, in the way things are spoken in the compound, quietly, sideways, in words that mean something other than what they say. You learn to hear it. You learn not to react to it. Reaction is a loss of ground. You also learn, more slowly and with greater resistance, that the women who are most dangerous to you are not the ones who dislike you, those you can see coming. The most dangerous is the woman who is perfectly cordial and who mentions, in a conversation with Senefer, By the time you understand this specific tactic, you have missed a summons you did not know about. It is the only one you miss this way. You do not miss another. Somewhere in your second year in the royal compound, Tia teaches you something that Nebita never did, that Meritre hinted at but never said outright. The hierarchy here is not fixed. It moves. Every season it moves. The question is not where you are standing when the season begins, but where you are positioned when it shifts. You have no illusions about what you are. You were bought. You were trained. You were moved upward through a series of transactions that you never agreed to and could not have refused. The empire that built these walls also built the logic that put you inside them. The theology says the Pharaoh is divine. The theology also, less loudly, says that the women around him are accessories to divinity, not players in it. And yet, you know the name of every senior administrator who visits the compound. You know which of Senefer's subordinates can be given a small gift of dried figs on the assumption that goodwill returned is goodwill banked. You know which of the great royal wife's ladies-in-waiting speak well of you and which do not. And you know this, not because anyone told you, but because you have been paying attention for 9 years. There are women in this compound who survived 20 years, 30, who became advisors in all but name, who shaped which son was seen favorably and which was not, who outlasted kings. You have no son. You have been summoned enough times that the absence of a son is noticed. Noticed in a palace means weighed. The women who produce sons move into a different category, elevated, protected, and simultaneously more threatened, because their sons make them stakes in a game larger than the inner rooms. You think about this. You think about it carefully, and you arrive at a position that Tia, when you tell her, regards with something that might be respect. A woman without a son, you say, is expendable. A woman without a son who knows every piece of information flowing through this compound is something else. Tia says nothing. She eats a dried fig. She looks at the wall. Then she says, "You learned faster than I did." Part 5. Aging in the Palace of Forever. Time, inside the compound, is marked differently than it is outside. Outside, time is the Nile. Rise and fall, planting and harvest. The festivals that march across the calendar like soldiers. Opet, Wipet, Renpet, the beautiful feast of the valley. Outside, time has a visible rhythm. You can see it in the grain and the mud and the sky. Inside, time is marked by other women. The young ones arrive. You remember arriving. You remember the smell of cedar wood and river mud and the man who did not look at you as he wrote. The young ones arrive with that same expression, watchful, careful, very still in the way of creatures unsure whether the stillness is safety or a different kind of danger. You are not old, but you are not 17. Somewhere around your mid-20s, Senefer's accounting of you shifts. You can feel it not in what is said, but in what is not offered. The summons come less frequently, then with more space between them, then not at all for a season. Then one, unexpected, which you take as a grace note, something being completed rather than continued. You are not discarded. This is important to understand about the compound. Women are not often thrown out. The empire does not discard what it owns. What happens is more gradual and more total. You are reclassified. You become part of the administrative structure of the inner household rather than one of its ornaments. You manage provisioning for a section of the residential wing. You teach a group of younger girls how to carry a water jar without spilling. You are Nebita now, not in name, not in rank, but in function, in knowledge, in the particular authority of someone who has survived long enough to understand how the compound truly works. Not as theology, not as hierarchy, but as a living system of exchange and positioning and managed fear. There's a girl, perhaps 12, who watches you the way you watched Meritre. She thinks you do not notice. You notice the first week. You say nothing to her about it. She is learning the right lesson. The ivory comb is still in the cedar chest. You have added to it over the years. A carnelian bracelet from a woman who left the compound and pressed it into your hand the way Iset once pressed the comb. A small faience amulet of the goddess Hathor that you received after a difficult season. A folded piece of linen on which someone a long time ago drew a small fish in ink and gave it to you without explanation. These are the artifacts of a life conducted entirely inside walls. When you lay them out on the mat some evenings, they form a kind of record. Not official, not written into any scroll, but real in the way that things are real when they are the only evidence a person has that she mattered and was here and survived. The Pharaoh who bought you has died. There is a new Pharaoh. The compound adjusts, as it always does. Some women elevated, some reclassified, the machinery of the inner rooms recalibrated around a new gravitational center. Jennifer is gone. There is a new steward, younger, less precise, who will learn precision soon enough or will be replaced by someone who already has it. You are not elevated. You are also not reduced. You occupy a position that the new machinery has found apparently worth keeping, which is the closest thing to victory available in this place. The girl who watches you has been moved to the corridor near the second wife's rooms. You said nothing to Jennifer's replacement. You said nothing to anyone. But you did spend 3 mornings this month provisioning that corridor's supply of oil lamps. You made sure they were always full. They will not write her name in the official records. The official records have a category for her existence. A designation meaning acquired, usable, stored. But names inside that category are kept in the household provisioning scrolls, not the monuments. The monuments are for pharaohs, for wars, for the gods who require stone and eternity. The provisioning scrolls decay. She knew this. She knew the architecture of her erasure before it was finished. She spent decades inside a machine designed to use her, and she learned the machine so completely that by the end, the machine needed her more than she needed it to have a name for her.